So we hope you'll stay with us for the next 20 minutes or so for what I think should be a fascinating addendum to the documentary. It's going to be a conversation with 4 people involved in it, so I'm going to call them up to the stage now. That's the director, Matt Gallagher, producer, Cornelia Principe, Jane Sims, my colleague at the London Free Press, and subject of the documentary and lawyer Ben Charlebois.
So you stayed. Thank you for staying. That was a tough watch.
We all working? Microphones are working, guys?
I think we're all good.
Excellent. To your point there, Matt, tough watch. I found it heavy. And it was my second time watching it, and I found it even heavier this time than I did when I first watched it. So my first question is for Cornelia and Matt. How did you navigate delving so deep into something this dark? Cornelia, I'll start with you.
When Matt first told me about this idea of the documentary, I mean, he'd been reading about the story online, and initially I didn't want to do it. It was too much. I didn't want to watch those videos. I just thought, oh, I don't want to go there. But the more we talked about it, and the more I learned about it, I realized it's a bigger story. It's a bigger context in terms of what kind of world we want to live in. You know, what kind of who do we want to be the judge and jury for all of us? Issues about online information, which Jane references in the film, and that it's important to really look at sort of the dark underbelly of what's going on online, and look at it in the eye and say, we've got to do something about this, whether it's criminally in the justice system, the criminal system, and morally and ethically. So that's why I said yes, and Matt can take it from there. But it was really, he sort of was fascinated from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I became fascinated. I'm from Windsor, Ontario. Me and my wife, Cornelia, the producer, we are married and we live in Toronto, but I read the Windsor Star every day, and I started to read about Jane's articles in the Windsor Star. She writes at the London Free Press, but they were posting them in the Windsor Star because it was a Windsor story, and there was a series of 8 or 10 articles, and I was just thinking to myself, like, what is going on here? I mean, you got this guy who's claiming to stop children or to help children avoid online predation, but he's being charged by the London police, and I thought this was a really interesting sort of thing, and I wanted to sort of explore it a bit more. So I emailed Jason Nasser, and he agreed to meet with me for lunch, and the rest is on camera there.
Matt, I had a couple, I suppose, sort of technical questions for you. YouTube is just filled with millions and millions of hours of self-generated content, and it seems to me that would be a documentary filmmaker's dream. Does it make your job more easier, the way that YouTube can offer up material that you can review it, you can use it for your films?
Yeah, I mean, strangely, I mean, Jason spent 5 years operating in Windsor, Ontario with, some sort of impunity. Like, nobody really paid attention. Everybody, he was posting these videos, and nobody really said, well, what's going on here? The system wasn't really catching up to him. I think it took the London police. There was a detective there named Angela Johnson who sort of paid attention to a suicide that was related to what Jason was doing and sort of looked into it, and that sort of started the whole ball rolling, I think.
Cornelia, what does it say about Jason Nasser that it seems to be enthusiastic, that he so enthusiastically participated in this documentary?
Well, it's interesting because the easiest person to get on camera for this documentary was Jason Nasser. Everyone else, maybe just Jane Sims aside, it was hard because it's a difficult thing for people to come forward and talk about. There's a lot of trauma. But with Jason, he was happy to talk. And this was after he had been convicted already. So we filmed it mostly between the time of his conviction and his sentencing. It says that he was confident about what he had done, even though he had just been convicted, and had no regrets. And we didn't know that when we first reached out to him, and that even at the first interview, I think Matt had a lot of questions for him about. The first question was, "Do you have any regrets?" Or do you have any, how do you feel about what you've done? And he just kept doubling down on that. And we were surprised, actually. We were very surprised. We didn't expect that. So
I didn't quite twig to it when I first watched it, but tonight I noticed there's several times he refers to himself as a filmmaker. Do you think maybe in his mind he sees you as peers? That maybe that's...
Yeah, I mean, I think Cornelia and I did a film for TVO in 2019 called Prey, P-R-E-Y. It was about clergy sex abuse, and we sort of pulled back the curtain on a clergy sex abuse civil trial, and we followed the whole trial. And so at the end of the film, the Catholic Church didn't come out very good in that film because they were, trying to hide this priest for 4 decades. And I think Jason saw that film, and he thought that, oh, these people are good people. They're going after child predators like I am. And I think that's what might have convinced him to be in the documentary. I don't know.
If I can add something to that, I mean, it's kind of interesting that I think this just kind of came to me while you were talking, but I'm aware of one film that he's made aside from this creeper hunter stuff, and I don't remember the name. It was years before. And in this film, he's actually defending or telling the story of a local man who was accused of being a child predator. So it is interesting to see the flip-flop back and forth from different sides of the story.
So Jane, you and I have worked together at the Free Press for a quarter century, and you've been covering the courts for longer than that. I can't think of a better word for it than weirdness. Where does the Nassar trial rank among, in terms of the weirdest, strangest, most memorable, and not in a good way, trials that you've covered?
I'd call it, yeah, it's high up there for weird, and it's high up there for length. I mean, this case rattled around the London courts for a long time. A lot of it because Mr. Nassar kept changing lawyers. He got into a lot of disagreements with counsel about going forward, and even in the end, at the trial, his final lawyer was got off the case for ethical reasons relating to something that Mr. Nassar wanted to do at the trial. And although that wasn't said out loud in court, she removed herself, as she should have, from what was happening, and then he got to take over it all by himself. People who are self-represented, that's always a bit of a roller coaster ride too, and this certainly was as well. And the other part of it being that Nassar is not a typical sort of offender. Usually it is somebody who has done something that you can connect the dots back to a violent event or something like that. This had come in a different sort of sense, and it was an understanding of what due process is about, what police tactics are when it comes to investigation, how people who are supposed to come before the courts, that there's good evidence that you can follow and will stick as far as a prosecution is concerned. And that wasn't here. This was just really strange.
And so many comments from him in this documentary that just rattled me when I heard them. And Jane, I'll ask you this one, and Ben, I'd like to get your thoughts too. One comment Nassar said of a man who died: "Do I feel bad he's dead? Sure. I guess it sucks to be dead." How do you sort of interpret that, Jane, or take that on?
I can recall in court at his sentencing hearing where many times, and Ben knows this from being in court, you will hear someone say that they have remorse about what happened, or they feel terrible about what happened, or I wish I could turn back time. I've heard that many times, right? That wasn't Jason Nassar. He would step up to the ledge of maybe feeling bad, and then he'd kind of pull back. And that was astonishing to me, that he couldn't recognize the kind of pain and harm that he had caused people.
And startling for you too, Ben, to hear things, comments like that?
Yeah, I think some people have the capacity for empathy and some don't. And I think it was particularly evident in the trial when his self-interest is on the line. He has a reason to lie. He has a reason to put on a show and say, I've learned a lesson and I did something wrong and I'm sorry. And I feel bad. And he really couldn't bring himself to even start down that pathway. And I think he just doesn't get it. He doesn't get that empathy feature.
And can I add to that? I really don't think he likes to be told that he's wrong about something. I think that's kind of fundamental right at the bottom of this. He does not like to be told he's wrong.
No, he's the smartest person in any room he's in, right? Even as a self-represented litigant, he would be quoting case law very confidently and would have no idea what he was saying. Like, it was very apparent that the things that were coming out of his mouth, you know, he was using the words in the correct order, but they were not doing the thing he thought they were doing. And that's kind of how he's approached a lot of things in life, filmmaking being one of them.
So Ben, I mean, I have so much respect for the family members that took part in this documentary to sort of speak up for their loved ones, and I have respect for you as a family member in a very different way, obviously. But kind of stunning to me when the film reveals that you're Jason's cousin. I wonder, would you have sort of your earliest memories of Jason? Were there childhood times you spent together, or was it not? Or was it more distant?
Yeah, and I won't get too much into the specifics, but I mean, we were close growing up. I grew up in Windsor. His siblings are my cousins who I love, and his parents are my aunt and uncle who I love. So it wasn't an easy decision to get involved in this. And I was one of the many reluctant people that Matt and Cornelia had to cajole into participating. And I'm glad I did, and thank you for putting this together, because you know, it's a great film, but it was tough. And I think, like, Matt did a really good job of capturing that, and that when he's asking me that question, and I keep awkward smiling, and I hate it, but it was honest, because I didn't know what to say, and I didn't know how to react, because inside I was still processing it. So we were, I mean, you know, we weren't best friends growing up. He's 15 years older than me or something, but, you know, they were 3 kids, we were 3 kids. We had Sunday dinners together. So it's tough. I feel a lot of sympathy for you know, my family, but I feel a lot more sympathy for the families of everyone else that he's hurt. And at some point, you know, somebody's got to do something about it. That's kind of, you know, I got to a point where it eventually got to a point where it was easy to kind of speak up about it, because it just seemed like there's so many wrongs mounting, and you know, it felt like the right thing to do.
So I see some real overlap between kind of online vigilante videos, of, you know, exposing alleged child molesters and revenge porn. You're harnessing the power of social media to crush somebody. And I was fascinated to see Jocelyn in the documentary. I'm wondering, Ben, if you have, what that was like for you working with her, and if you might have any update in terms of where the police investigation is.
Yeah, Jocelyn is wonderful. She's you know, she's a mother with a young daughter who really just, you know, she struggled with this quietly for a very long time, because it's a shameful thing. You know, these topics of a sexual nature, they're shameful even when you weren't doing it. Like, she didn't do anything wrong. You know, how many people out there have these kind of pictures of themselves on their phone or on someone else's phone, right? She didn't actually do anything wrong. But the shame that is kind of inherent in these sexualized topics, it bullies people into silence. And so she was quiet for a very long time, and I think was eager for an opportunity to have somebody say, like, hey, we can actually do something about this. So we did get them taken down. At first, I thought it was going to be easy. I thought we were going to go to the web hosting, the domain hosting companies, and and say this is non-consensual, and go to Google and say this is non-consensual, and they would both go, all right, we're going to take it down, we're going to delist it. They all have non-consensual content policies, but none of them really care, was the sad reality that I discovered. It was actually very difficult. We ended up, this is very cynical, we ended up claiming intellectual property over it and getting it taken down as a matter of commercial intellectual property rights, which is legally correct, I will say, but absurd that it had to come to that. So it is, as far as an update, the sad reality is that there's a section of the Criminal Code, 162.1, that only came to be, it was only enacted in 2016. So prior to that, it wasn't strictly illegal to upload somebody's pictures, intimate pictures of them without their consent to the internet. It's a relatively young criminal code provision. And these photos were uploaded just before that, but they remained up until 2024. And so our argument was that, these clauses will say something like uploads, distributes, makes available, or in any way, communicates this content. Our argument was that by continuing to host them passively, you are making them available. Windsor Police is a little bit reluctant to follow that line of thinking. So there hasn't been a final decision made, and they have communicated like we are in communication with them, and so they are actively reviewing it, but the reality is that it kind of falls in what they seem to think is a gray area. I don't think it's particularly that gray, but they do.
I think that's an important point to highlight, is that the criminal justice system always seems like one step behind the technology, and I think that was what's really important about this film in the larger context, is that Jason was doing what he was doing for 5 years until someone took their life, and someone said, well, wait a minute, is this appropriate? Is this legal? Should we allow this person to continue doing it? And it's incredible to think that it was only in 2016 that it was okay to put naked pictures of people without their consent online. It's not illegal to shame someone. However, I think we do need to look at what's happening now, and especially with new technology, more and more AI and all that sort of stuff, we really need to sort of get ahead of it instead of being 3 steps or 1 step behind.
And in some ways, this is not that new, right? I mean, there was a TV show called To Catch a Predator on network television. I think it was 20 years ago it started, and I could be wrong, but I think it ended when someone committed suicide.
It ended.
The subject of that. Am I right about that?
It did end with a suicide. That was actually filmed on their program. So, yeah, and so that show was canceled, but unfortunately, it created this appetite in a bunch of copycats like Jason Nasser and all these other people across North America. It's not just Jason Nasser.
There are others, several others. There's
many
another
others.
one not far from here, actually. Still,
Yeah.
so I guess my question I'll ask for all of you, Matt, I'll start with you. Is that where do you stand? Where do we draw that line between the very reasonable impulse to protect children and the empathy for people who are, I'll say, entrapped?
Yeah, I mean, my entry point into this documentary was I tended to look away at that stuff. I thought to myself, okay, so these people are being entrapped, but sounds like they're doing something wrong, and well, let's hear what Jason has to say about it. I mean, my wife Cornelia and we have a daughter, so deep in the deepest part of my reptilian brain, there's a vigilante lurking somewhere that would cause harm to anybody who harmed my daughter. But at the end of the day, and through the course of the interviews that I did with these people, I started to understand that, this doesn't work. And every law enforcement expert, from detectives to judges to people that I spoke to along the way, was like, this isn't helping us, it's hurting. So I've changed my tune on that for sure.
And Jane, journalistically, I mean, you've got the experience where you can handle these sorts of curveballs, but hard to capture that nuance when you're covering a trial, right?
Yeah, I think that's fair, Pat. I think this was a hard story to write in terms of people caring about some guy who was in in his own sort of heroic way as he presented it, was doing something about a problem that every parent is terrified of. So to have a trial of someone who had been perceived before this time to be doing a good, and then to be sort of understand legally and ethically and certainly morally, I'll say as well, that this wasn't right, was oftentimes, I think, for our readers, a difficult thing to understand. But as the process kept going, I think that there was a better appreciation of why this was not kosher at all.
Yeah.
I think the fact that the jury only took a few hours to make a decision, I think they went through that process probably coming in thinking, what is this? And then at the end, they were like, okay, this is definitely
And Ben, from a
Not
legally speaking, you sort of to Matt's point, police have said and they say in the documentary, this doesn't help us.
Absolutely. I think when you cover a trial involving child predation, a lot of times what happens, well, let's be clear. There's an international network of law enforcement that work together. There are people that you know, they're looking at the dark web. They're looking at the exchange, for example, of pornographic images that are traded all over the place. They are heading down avenues by which you can get good evidence that would stand up in court to prove that somebody is indeed engaging in this activity. And that's not what was happening here. This was just like sort of, you know, throwing a dart at a dartboard and say, I got this guy, and that must be him.
And I'll say from a legal, ethical, philosophical perspective, every now and then we forget that if we don't protect the rights of the accused, we haven't protected anybody's rights, right? Like, I think we're in a phase right now where the pendulum is kind of swinging a little bit back towards mob justice. I think maybe since 2016 or so, that's become a little bit more socially acceptable. But I mean, due process is, I think, what stands between democracy and something else that we don't want to see.
Very clear. And I'll just say, Jane, your coverage of the Nassar stuff was so good. This documentary was so riveting. I feel like I talked to you for an hour about this. And I want to say thank you for joining me here on the panel. Thank you to everyone for joining us tonight and whenever you're going to be back at the festival. And have a good evening.
Should we mention what happened earlier tonight?
Should we mention what
Yeah,
happened
I
earlier?
mean, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So where does the Nassar story go from here? That's the next question I was going to ask.
Jane was there. I'll let Jane. She's the reporter.
Well, I'll try to report on it properly, but I think there's people in the audience that saw what happened. Mr. Nassar was here, and he was detained by the police outside.
Before the screening.
Just before the screening, he was inside the building. He is under an order not to be within 250 meters of family members involved in this case. That was within 250 meters. So we will see what happens now.
And he was at the last screening of this film in Windsor on Friday, in a park across the street, hiding in the bushes, which is a really great way to show the world you're not a weirdo.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.